Way Back and Trade, a podcast by Trading the Market.
Welcome to episode 3 of Trading the Market podcast. I'm your host Matt. Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on again. For those who don't know, I'm Mark. I'm one of the pro traders at Trading the Market. And Matt, your host, is one of our budding pro traders. And have you had a good couple of weeks, Matt?
Yeah, not bad. It's been a couple of weeks now, hasn't it, since I last spoke to you. So I haven't done much trading myself. I've been testing some horses and keeping an eye out on the European leagues ready for once 8 weeks to come along. I'm just having a look to see who's up to what, really. How about yourself?
Yeah, ideal. I've been trading the F1. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about our upcoming subject on this week's podcast, or this bi-weekly podcast. We'll get to what we've been trading at the end, if you like.
Sure, go for it. So this week we're going to be speaking to a newly pro trader, Dan. So Dan has built himself up steadily from juggling a full-time job along with taking on trading, and he's recently decided to take the leap and just focus solely on trading. So that's going to be a pretty exciting and in-depth conversation.
Yeah, it's one I was excited for myself, I'll be honest. And for those who don't know Dan, and you probably don't know him by the name Dan, if you're in the Discord, you'll know him as Kim Yuri Step on Me or Yuri. And I've been dealing with Dan since December of last year, so December of 2022, and helping him sort of towards his journey, myself, James, and the rest of the people at TTM. And he's gone from starting out as somebody who plays poker, as he'll tell you himself, into trading, and we get to hear Dan's story. I'm very excited to hear it. I've not been involved in the interview, so I get the privilege of listening to Matt and Dan for the first time like yourselves. What did you think of the interview, Matt?
It was good. It blew me away at times, to be honest. He's so zoned in on what he's doing and where he wants to go. It was impressive. Either that or I'm just thick and I'm not a wide thinker, but very impressive to talk to him and just listen to the stuff he's got to say. It's fascinating to understand how people like Dan and yourselves operate.
I think anybody listening to this has probably got a lot to learn from Dan, as you'll get his journey from the start to finish and where he's up to now, and is so articulate when he speaks.
Absolutely.
So, would you like to introduce the interview?
Okay, so in this first feature of this bi-weekly podcast, this is where we're going to be talking to Dan in depth about his journey of how he became a budding trader to a pro trader. Enjoy.
You picked Way Back and Trade, probably because you thought BTC stood for the Banjo Tuning Company.
As promised, this is a segment which should be quite fascinating for anybody, no matter where they are in their trading journey. So we're going to be joined by Dan now, who has made the step from becoming a prospective trader to a pro trader. Dan, great to have you. How you doing?
Hi Matt, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. Looking forward to this one. So before we get into the guts of it all, tell me what life was about beforehand. What were you doing before you became a pro trader?
Yeah, so I was working nights in a vehicle breakdown call centre. I was working 12 hours a night, 4 on, 4 off. But until I got that job, I was unemployed for 3 years. Then I got my job. But by the time that I got my job, I was already making more money than my job was paying. So I was already in the mindset pretty much ready to quit and give up work, because I'd been doing this for 3 years. And at that point, and I'd started with £200. I'd never had to reload. I've never had to put any more money in. I've never lost that initial role or anything like that. So where I am now, it makes it quite easy. Also, as I do take sometimes some higher prices, as we've had like chats about and things like that for laying and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much because where I only started with £200, the way I see it is anything that I've made above £200 ever is just, it's the market's money. So that's not even, the way I see it is that's not even my money, because I only started with £200 So as far as I'm concerned, no matter what stakes or what price I'm laying at, the way I look at it is I'm only risking £200 here, because all that other money is just pure profit, so it's other people's money.
That's impressive that you've never had to reload. We see numerous stories of people, including myself, having blown banks. Even the pros, which are part of TTM, they'll tell you themselves. So, was there an inspiration moment which made you think, I want to get into sports trading?
So there wasn't really an inspirational moment as per se, but I did. I used to do, not all that often, but I used to do a little bit of like value betting on tennis, on like
Okay.
just bookmakers and stuff. Nothing like too wild or crazy. Just literally trying to find value and things like that, which I was quite bad at. But because I was very inefficient at it. But I did okay by the end of it, but it just wasn't worth the amount of time that I was putting into it. And so just naturally through like looking at things on YouTube and just stuff like that, I eventually just stumbled. I can't remember exactly when, where, why, or how, but just through looking through value betting videos and things like that on YouTube, I eventually just found a couple of things about the exchange. And when I saw it was a betting exchange, obviously the word exchange, financial markets, I was like, okay, this is quite interesting. And then I started to think, well, if there's all this money being matched, and like the amount, like, because obviously you can see the like liquidity in the market, right? It's at the top of the like back to lane stuff usually. And so I thought, well, if there's so many people putting so much money down, then surely there's people who are beating this, like who are just consistently just taking money from the markets. So where do I start? And so I then just started just going through YouTube and just literally like betting exchange strategies, betting exchange vids, like the kind of generic thing you do when you find something like that. And obviously, I get all the clickbaity stuff, but I knew like a lot of it was clickbait, but I would still watch it because I had absolutely no idea. I'd never even seen a betting exchange before. So I watched a lot of that stuff, and then I stumbled across TTM, and the rest is history.
So how long had you been using exchanges before you found TTM then? What was the point that made you think, okay, I'm on the exchanges now, and you discover TTM? Was it for extra resource?
Yeah, so one of the first strategy videos that I ever came across was laying the card, because I'd always, from the value betting on tennis, I'd always been interested in just like horse racing, because you always see these like old stories of like somebody winning a stupid amount of money from a really silly bet or something like that on horses. And so I knew that there was definitely money in horses. You do see quite a lot of people making videos about the exchanges, and I would say that most of them don't know what they're talking about. And secondly, most of them, some of them might be there just to kind of like show you what the exchange is, which is fine, obviously absolutely fine, but it's when it's people trying to like tell you about strategies and things like that, but you just clearly know that that doesn't work and things like that. Or because of the value betting from tennis, if I was watching one of these clickbaity videos about like these 5 secrets, blah blah, all this kind of stuff, right? Because of the value betting from tennis and just kind of stuff like that, and a little bit to do with all that, I could just kind of tell like, well, that what this guy's talking about just isn't going to work. If you know what I mean, because I hadn't seen a betting exchange, but I'd seen like a bookmaker and stuff, and I'd seen prices and things like that. And obviously, I'd go over my own like strike rates, profit losses, and things like that from the value betting of tennis. But then having that kind of little bit of skill of already going over losses and things like that and looking into it, I just could tell that this is just absolute crap. And it's clickbait when it says like 5 top tips, blah blah blah, get good in just 10 minutes with this and all that kind of, because it's just impossible.
Never lose a trade again.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So that, but then when they'll try and tell you about strategies, because of the like clickbaity title, I just instantly know, nope.
So with regards to being part of TTM then, Dan, and obviously you are a part of the Discord community, which allows you access to plenty of other traders, pro and budding like myself. How does that actually affect your journey?
I think it's a great thing to have, because obviously you can all bounce ideas off each other. And what I like about being here with TTM is that everyone's quite lenient. Like nobody's opinions like are going to be like struck down or Adrian, fuck's sake.
Mark, don't cut that one.
You should anyway. No. Yeah. So I really, really enjoy being part of the community, and it's definitely like helped me in a lot of ways. Everything from all of the strategy sub channels and stuff like that. So not only do you have the videos, you also have the like dedicated sub channel in the server on Discord to that particular strategy, where there's usually people talking about it. And with football having been in like a bit of an off season before the winter leagues come back, probably been a little bit quiet, and I myself haven't really touched any football at the moment, but they're all gonna start going off again, which is really good.
So, Dan, how do you decide which sports and events you're going to trade? Did you have predetermined ideas, or is most of what you do based off of the strategies which are presented to us by TTM? Just take us through that.
So what I did when I did find TTM is I watched back to back every single video on the strategies that they had, and I chose the one that I felt suited just myself the best, which was laying over 3.5, and that's because I didn't want to spend 45 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever, like staring at the screen. I wanted something that was relatively short to trade, like short time span to trade, that actually had quite simple criteria and wasn't that complicated, but also you could actually learn a lot about the markets from, and the laying over 3.5 just ticked all those boxes for me. So that's where I started, and I did that for a year before then moving on to still doing a bit of laying over 3.5s, but then my focus was on second half goals more.
Wow, so actually for one whole year you solidly traded over the over 3.5 strategy and nothing else?
About a year or so, yeah.
So that's admirable. It's impressive. That's how it should be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people don't see the value in doing just one strategy, and I think a lot of people will try one strategy maybe for 5-10 trades or something like that, and maybe they'll take, whether it's paper trading or real trading, maybe they'll take 1 or 2 reds or something like that, and they'll just instantly give up. They won't go back over the loss. They won't ask themselves the questions. They won't put in the work.
It does sound weird to say, but when you look at it, there's so much admin involved in trading, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that about 99% of trading is going through data, finding selections, going over your losses, etc., etc., etc. Maybe checking out some new strategies, or maybe trying to find your own strategies or your own edges in the markets, things like that. And the only 1% of it is actually, for me, it's only 1% of it is trading, which is just typing the buttons, because I've done all of the other work that leads to that. So the way I see it is I've got nothing left to chance. Like if it reds, it reds. If it greens, it greens. But no matter what happens, I've done all of the due diligence that I'm supposed to. So I'm just all good to go.
No, of course. Makes sense. So I'm going to press you now on how did you make the leap then from beginning your journey to then going full time? What was the trigger point that made you think, sod it, I'm going to stop working, I'm going to give this all my energy?
When I got my job, I was already making more money than my job was paying me, but I wasn't 100% confident in making the switch yet, especially as I'd been unemployed for 3 years, and so I actually wanted to get back into work and this, that and the other, and I didn't want to take the plunge like too early, and my bankroll also, and the amount of money that I had made wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, it wasn't enough to justify quitting and going trading full time. So I kept saying to myself, give it 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks later, give it another 4 weeks, and then 4 weeks later, give it, etc., etc., because I wanted to be absolutely confident and absolutely sure that this is what I want to do. And what was happening was, as each day was going by, because of working nights, I can't stay up and trade all day and then go to work all night, and stay up all day and trade and go to work all night. And it was getting to a point where I just said to myself, I'm making more money in 4 days that I trade than 4 days at work. And so if I took those 4 days of trading, if I could do it every single day, I would make even more money than I'm making at work. But it wasn't necessarily the financial, it wasn't necessarily because of the finances, it was way more to do with time than money, because I'd had absolutely no life whatsoever. I had no free time, no nothing, and just going to work and then trading and going to work and trading and going to work and trading. There just wasn't any balance to actually do anything else, which is fine, but it will burn you out. And so it eventually got to a point where I just said, it was getting to a point where around like the last couple of weeks before I made the decision to go for it, I was kind of getting not tilted, but I'd be at work and going, I should just be at home trading. This sucks. This absolutely sucks. I'd rather be at home. Like not
all
as
think that, but you've got to be efficient.
yeah. So it wasn't. But that also did cross my mind. It's like, right, do you want to be at home just because you want to be lazy, or do you want to be at home because you genuinely want to trade, because you genuinely want to make an actual go of this? And despite how profitable you've been so far and how well everything's gone so far, it's going to be quite a change from having a job and having trading as a side income to trading full time. But luckily, because I got pretty good playing poker between the ages of 18 and 21, and I spun a bankroll in a similar fashion then. And and so I knew the kind of like pitfalls to like avoid and just things like that. But I also knew, because I had made a living doing something similar, because the thing with trading is the income isn't guaranteed and it's not steady. Whereas so it's like with a job, you know exactly how much you're going to get paid at the end of the month. Whereas with trading, it just doesn't work like that. You might have like, an average profit every week, an average profit every 30 days, but it's just not guaranteed. But because I'd done that with poker for 3 years, I was used to like the swings, and I was used to how it can go and how it can't go and all of that. I was still had to keep saying to myself, is this really what you want to do? Is it just that you just can't be bothered to go to work? Or is it actually that you are just genuinely hungry to actually just trade? And I made the decision, and I haven't looked back. But the day that I quit, it was my shifts were 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. And I just I'd spoken to a guy that I was working with, and about it, and said like, look man, I can't do this anymore. I just need to go home and trade. Sorry man. And so I just shook it. I stood up. We shook each other's hands. He was sound. So we shook each other's hands. He's like, good luck. I was like, yeah, good luck. And then I wrote a really 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 crappy email to shitty, not crappy, but not to management, but just to the office and everything. And then
This was your notice period.
Yeah, I didn't work my notice period.
You've done a bit of big roll.
I literally email bye. But that was the day that I quit, and that was actually the day that payroll got done. And we got paid weekly on a Friday. Lo and behold, Friday came and I didn't get paid. So I sent an email saying like it's illegal to not pay wages for hours worked. And it all got resolved in the end. But I know that people at work are probably thinking, oh, it's because he's lost everything. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if they
principle, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was the principle. And so it's like if anybody from my old work happens to be watching this, yeah, I'm a pro now.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I know that you know James and Mark well, are pro traders. So how might they have helped you with your journey, if at all? Assuming they have.
Yeah, they definitely have. James was I'm pretty sure like the first person I actually like spoke to about the decision to go pro. Simply because, and also obviously he massively helped me, because if it wasn't for that 3.5 video, I wouldn't be here, and if it wasn't for TTM, I wouldn't be here. So that's James, Mark, and everybody else at TTM. Absolutely fantastic. But in terms of like help on my journey, James, I've spoken to him about kind of like when kind of, not necessarily exactly like when I should go pro, but I can't remember exactly when it was, but he did, he actually gave me some pretty good advice. And I think this was around where I said, I'd had my job, but by the time I'd had my job, I was making more money from trading than my job anyway. And that was around the first time I thought, actually, like maybe in the not so distant future, it's actually possibly realistic that I can trade full time. And so I just dropped him a message, and I think this was actually about not that long after I'd asked the exact question in Questions for a Pro Trader about when did you know to go full time. And James said cause something like, I can't remember exactly, but something like give it a fair bit of time, and then see how your bankroll's doing, see how you're doing, see how you're feeling. And then I think it was about 3 months later, I pretty much asked the same question again, and I don't know why I asked it again like 3 months later, but I think it was just, and the reason why I spoke to James about it instead of anybody else is because football was basically all I was trading, with like 3.5 and then second half goals. And so as the football trader, I figured he's probably the best person to ask about this.
Yeah, Alex, from my experience, Mark's not really into football. He doesn't really do it all. I'm sure he could if he wanted to, but football's not what he's renowned for.
Yeah. And Mark's definitely...
That was a subtle dig.
Yeah.
So, going back to using the over 3.5 strategy.
Yep.
I suppose it wouldn't be fair to miss out the work that Ian and Aaron have done as
well.
Yeah. The website and the simulator.
Yeah,
which
of
is,
course.
For me, that's like a PS4. I'm on it all the time.
Yeah, of course. It's the football trading simulator is absolutely fantastic, because you could have like, say, any idea that you want, and you can pretty much just like run it. And obviously it does just like sort of games at random and stuff like that, but you can at least have a pretty good idea of if you're kind of on the right lines with something or not. And obviously you have all of the, like, you've got the laser draw stuff there, the second half goal stuff there, so you've got so much as a resource just in that website alone, and it is like really, really good.
So I know since you've gone pro, you've had a couple of conversations with regards to aftercare, which I'll get you to elaborate on a bit more in terms of dealing with being a pro trader. So how has that helped the conversations you've had with Mark, and what advice would you give?
When we all went out for like some drinks and stuff, that's when I told Mark and James and the guys there that I'd been pro trading, but I'd been pro trading for about 4 weeks. At that point, I think it's about 4 weeks. It was only a couple of weeks or so, maybe, but I think 4 weeks. Ever since, like, me and Mark have often like talked a fair bit, and we did talk a fair bit that night as well, just about a lot of, like, I guess, like, kind of just like psychology and stuff like that. And over since I've joined TTM as well, like, me and Mark have had quite a few conversations and stuff about just a kind of, I guess, like, psychology and stuff like that, because I'm very, very into like psychology and philosophy and stuff like that. And so I spend a lot of time just on YouTube, like watching documentaries and stuff. So it will be stuff about philosophy, stuff about psychology. I watch an awful lot of that kind of stuff, and so it's very, very helpful. And I think me and Mark have quite a similar like outlook, and a kind of similar way in how we maybe process stuff. And so from that, it's like, I just don't know. I just don't know how to say it. And yeah, he's had my back, and he's always been there if I need anything, and we've had some pretty good chats.
He's very easy to talk to. Gives a lot of time to people.
Yeah, definitely.
So, risk and emotions. How do you separate them?
Oh, this is a very interesting one. That could be a whole thing in of itself. So,
and that's what this is all about.
Yeah. So, risk and emotions. When I'm trading, I kind of don't really have any emotion. There is sometimes where I'm very, very coin flippy about a situation. Like, let's say there was a horse the other day. I can't remember. The 11th of September around 8 o'clock. A horse called Eyes. So this is a horse that I'd selected for a lay. Can't remember exactly what the price was, but it would have been between 10 and 20. And I took the lay, but I wasn't massively happy about it because it was a very, very big coin flip, because it fit all of my criteria to lay it, but just from memory, I believe it was a triple course and distance winner. It might have only been a one-time course and distance winner, but I think it was a triple course and distance winner. It was an Irish horse. I think he might have had some... Yeah, you go, blinkers, yeah. He had blinkers on, and if I remember right, when Eyes has blinkers on, he actually runs a lot better than normal, and he actually ended up coming second, and it was a very, very close second. But the reason why I was coin flipping it in my head is because even though this horse fit my own criteria for laying based on a lot of other things, but it fit my criteria for laying, the fact that it was clearly a very, very, very strong horse, I was just in two minds. And the reason why I chose to lay it is simply because I just decided to trust the criteria. No other reason. That was it. I just decided to trust the criteria.
As you should.
Yeah, because I didn't. I've done it before where I've been coin flipping about a horse or even a second half goal or whatever trade. It's been a bit of a do I, don't I? I'm not sure. Like, I've done all the research and the criteria fits, but there's just something. Like, for example, with the horse, blinkers on, it tends to run a lot better. This horse in particular tends to run better when it's got blinkers on. It was an Irish horse, and Irish horses, Mark will either wipe this or keep it in, but from what I understand, Irish horses actually tend to run better in England than they do in Ireland.
I quite often look at an Irish horse and consider them contenders.
Yeah.
And they're normally quite high up on the time form ratings as well.
Yeah. But I've had situations like that before where I'm going to lay something, but I'm in two minds about it. So I say better safe than sorry, and I just walk away. But that's a decision that's being guided by emotion, right? Because even though it's 50-50 in my head, all of the criteria and the data is saying lay it, right? Those who don't know, I'm currently laying horses at the moment whilst we're in the off season to football.
And a lot of people are probably almost frightened at the fact that you lay horses between prices of 10 and 20. I wouldn't ask you to give your edge away, but why do you specifically look at that range? It does seem, some people might think, fucking hell, he's crazy.
Yeah, I used to, I used to think laying at decimal 4 for a second half goal was absolutely insane. So, come a long way. So it's mainly because of the criteria that I've got. It just so happens that between 10 and 20 is like the most profitable part. That's basically it. And the fact that I know it's profitable makes it kind of okay. Obviously the losses, they definitely sting, obviously, but by the end of the month or however long, like, yeah, the profit will show itself and all the rest of it. Like, for example, I haven't had a loss. I've had an average of 4 trades, 4 selections, 4 trades a day, and my last loss was on the 5th of September, and I haven't had a loss since. Wow. Yeah. And
that right there in itself is risky emotion, isn't it?
Yeah, and bearing in mind, it's only between decimal 10 and 20, so it's not it's not like I'm laying it like decimal hundreds or anything like super ridiculous or anything like that. But yeah, and so with that, I know losses will happen. I know losses are going to happen, but I know that my criteria and my selection process is good. And just because if a horse like taking Eyes was, if I remember right as well, he was like fairly fast, but he wasn't like the best of the best on the card, but he was kind of up there. But if there was something that was even more glaring, I would have just walked away, and that's why it was a coin flip in my head, because the criteria said it was fine to lay it, but Irish horse runs better with blinkers, has blinkers on, is a C&D winner, like course and distance winner, so not just the course, not just the distance, both.
Yeah.
Was very, very coin flippy in my head, but again, because the criteria said it's fine to lay it, I just went ahead and did it, because there are often times, and I think a lot of people probably do this, because I was quite guilty of doing this when I very first started trading, is you kind of have those coin flippy moments, and some you take, some you don't, and sometimes that will kind of put you in this kind of weird like spiral of like, you start self-doubting yourself a lot, and you start thinking, wait, nothing I'm doing is working, nothing I'm doing is right. And the reason is because half the time you're trading off emotion, so you're walking away because you just don't, even though the criteria lines up, you're walking away because you've just got a bad feeling, even though the criteria says it's fine, and vice versa. Sometimes you enter because the criteria says it's fine, but maybe it reds, and so then you start second guessing and doubting yourself for all the wrong reasons, which I think is a trap a lot of people fall into. Whereas if you just decide to just trust the criteria, because that's what this game is about. It's about the criteria and the data. So if you just trust the criteria and the data, and you kind of do, it's very easy to say if you just ignore your emotions. But what I mean is,
it feels that way more so than trusting yourself.
Yeah, it's like if the data says it's fine, then it's fine, and it's being able to actually kind of actualize and realize that the data says this is absolutely fine to trade, so just trade it. And if you're going outside of the criteria and you lose or it reds, it's kind of obvious why you lost, right? And so
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
yeah, and so by just sticking to the criteria and saying I don't care about what like my gut feeling says, I don't care about this, that, the other, I'm just going to trade solely on the data. And that's actually what happened with me when I made the transition from laying over 3.5 to then going into second half goals. My results, just like when I first started with 3.5 goals, were the exact same with second half goals. It was a bit all over the place. Sometimes I'd go a little bit outside the criteria, or I would walk away from a game that was perfectly fine for a second half goal, but maybe I've had a couple of bad days or a couple of reds over the last couple of days, so I just wasn't in the mood to trade it, etc., etc. So what I did was I just stopped and I took a step back and I just said, right, all I'm going to do is just trade off the criteria and the data. That's it. If I get some weird feeling, like unless there's a glaring red flag in the data itself, if the data says it's fine, I'm just going to trade it. And that's when my second half goal stuff just basically skyrocketed, because I just kept within the criteria. So then, on the data, so then if there was a loss, it's a lot easier to pinpoint. Then, was it because I chose to walk away when I shouldn't have? Was it because I should have gone in but didn't? Etc. Etc. It's like, well, if you're only trading off the data, then it's going to help you not have. You're not going to be worrying so much about whether or not it's going to lose or whether you've done the right thing, this, that, because the data says it's fine, so it's fine. And I'm here to say, if the data says it's fine, it's because it's fine.
Obviously, quite clearly you've done well, but am I right in thinking you are a smorgasbord of chaos to what might come across that way, because you were actually backing on the second half goals rather than laying, weren't you? And you were happy to take low prices provided you were absolutely confident. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, so it was kind of a little thing that I was working on. I kind of put it on the back burner because it was kind of getting like mixed results, and because I was doing because of all the time I've put into 3.5 goals and second half goals, as in getting second half goals. But what I'd found was I'd always see that, and I'm sure everyone else does, but around like decimal maybe 105 all the way down to 101, there's just thousands there, and mainly because it's such a low price. So on the backside at 1.04, that's actually, let's say there's £2,000 at 1.04 to back being offered to you. That's because somebody has laid 1.04 for 2,000.
Yeah.
And so what I would do is I thought, well, what? And so I asked myself, what happens if a goal goes in? Like, what happens to the price if a goal goes in? And you only lose. So let's say it's like 1.04. A goal goes in. It's only going to go up to about probably 1. Well, the highest it will go to is about 1.14. So effectively 10%. So
yeah,
I think
the 1.5.
So all that matters is the price 1.05. That's it. It doesn't matter if it's the 1.5, 2.5, 3.5 goal market. None of that matters. It's just purely whatever whatever overs unders is 1.05. And then what I would do is I would back it at 1.05, and then either just straight lay it off at 101. Again, using a back to lay calculator to like figure it out, but either straight lay it off at 101. Or lay, if it's 105 to 101, or lay 25% on each tick back down. But the reason I did that was because I figured it's such low risk. Like it's not a you're not going to make a whole lot of money doing it, but it's very, very low risk, because 1.04, it's 1.05 to 1.14 or whatever. It's 10%. So you're only going to lose 10% of whatever you staked as long as you trade out. But the downside to it is it can take, because there's just no money at that price at all. Like, obviously, that I said there's 2,000, but that £2,000 is way more often than not just one person's money.
Yeah.
And there's just nobody really trading at those prices, and so it takes about 20, sometimes up to 30 minutes for you to get fully matched and trade out. And so it's kind of that's why I put it on the back burner, because it's about trying to find games where the price is going to move a bit faster than that, but also where goals just aren't going to happen for 20 minutes. But then obviously the price and things like that. But yeah, that's why it's on the back burner. I think there's possibly something in it, but I'm not absolutely convinced. But I think there's a little something in there.
Well, now you're full time, you've got all the time in the world to look into it, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely.
So Dan, with going pro and all the sacrifice and the uncertainty that could go with it, certainly in the early stages, which you are yourself, how do you deal with the stress and the pressures of that?
So dealing with the stress and the pressure, I would say making the transition from like just having it as a side income to doing it full time, I did feel a little bit of stress and pressure for the first couple of weeks, I'd say, but because I knew that I'd been profitable for quite some time, because obviously as well with that, even though I only started with £200, I've never had to reload. Obviously, I did have like losses and quite heavy losing days when I first started and stuff like that. But once I was like consistently profitable, and making the transition, and then further down the line making the transition to being pro, the stress and the pressure, the first couple of weeks, it was on my mind a lot. Like, okay, this is it now. This is actually real. Like, this is what's in my exchange role is effectively my salary now. So it's not like I can look at it as I said earlier. I can't now look at it as, well, that's just all profit. It doesn't matter because it's other people's money. It's like, no, that is actually now my livelihood. So now it does matter. But because of being profitable, it doesn't really. I still do feel a bit of stress and a bit of pressure, but because I'm going through the motions, I'm doing the researching, I'm looking at the criteria, I'm not taking any shortcuts, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, I'm not doing anything, I'm keeping it as simple as I can and just sticking to what exactly has been working and going from there. And those first couple of weeks where I was feeling the pressure a little bit of like, because when I was trading in those couple of weeks, it was I'm actually risking my livelihood now. It wasn't like I'm just trading. It was I'm risking my livelihood on this, even though it was just a normal stake for me. Everything, I don't mean I was literally risking my whole bankroll. It was still like, okay, this is actually my wages that I'm risking here. It wasn't like, oh, this is just like my side income. But after a couple of weeks, that kind of like just settled down.
Is that because you remembered the confidence in your ability, or where did that come from?
Yeah, I would say it's in just the confidence really is that, because I think for most people they probably do, whether it's paper trading, and no matter how big or how small your stakes are, you are still like risking money at the end of the day. And I know that when I very, very first started, every single trade that I did was like super stressful for me, because I'm there risking money, blah blah blah, etc etc. And so it's like, okay, I hope this works, or I hope this goes well. But because I've went through all that stress at the very, very start, it's made it a lot easier now, because I've done it for a fair while now, that it's just going through the motions at this point. But if I do ever start to feel the stress or the pressure, there's a couple of things that I do. One thing is the most obvious one: just don't trade.
Yeah, which is very difficult, isn't it, for us?
Yeah, for sure. Like,
certainly when you're in your junior trading career.
Yeah, for sure. And especially as I'm still fairly recently turning pro, it's like I don't feel that I can have a day off yet. I do take days off, but I don't feel like I should be. But that's just because, number one, I actually like trading, and number two, if I'm not trading or researching stuff, I don't really have anything else to do. So I'd be very, very bored.
Okay,
but
so it's more boredom, not a case of, if I don't do this, I'm not going to make money.
Yeah. And there is always going to be the thought of, well, it could all be over tomorrow, or I could do something really silly one day or anything like that. But I have my own things in place where if for whatever reason, like, the stress and the pressure is getting to me, again, first and foremost, if I know, if for whatever reason, let's just say I've had a bad day in my personal life or something, if I know that I'm just not in a good mindset, I'm just not going to trade. And it might make me even more in a worse mindset because I genuinely love trading. So it might get a bit more annoying for me, but I know that, today's today. It's if it's been a bad day or whatever, personal life or whatever, it's okay. Just there'll be trades tomorrow. Don't worry. But if it was a case of like I need to trade, or I feel that I need to trade, well, first of all, if there's nothing to actually trade, if I've got no selections, then obviously I'm just not going to trade. I'm not going to go out of my way to find something to trade just because it's now what I do full time. If there's nothing there to trade, I just won't trade it. But if I am like kind of halfway through my trading day and it's for whatever reason something's just like getting to me about it, all I'll do is I will put all of the rest of my day's trades on hold. So I won't be there like on the next horse race that I've got. I won't be lining it all up and getting it all ready on like my computer and everything. I will just go. Instead of doing that, I'll just go back over the race cards and I will just continue. I'll just reprofile it, reselect it, etc., etc., etc. And I will keep asking myself, are you sure you want to trade this? Why are you going to trade this? What is your justification for wanting to trade it? Why? Because if I'm not in a good frame of mind, I need to double, triple, quadruple check with my own self, and basically keep myself in check that the reason why I'm wanting to trade this, look, because let's just say I'm in like a B- or a C- mental state, then you're going to be making B- or C- decisions. So you can kind of counteract that by triple checking, quadruple checking, and going over it as much as you can. Literally, if you have to, get out a magnifying glass and just look at everything and ask yourself, are you still happy to trade this? But like not like, of course I am, I planned it. Like, no, are you actually like, do you have a justification in trading it? Like, it might sound stupid, but imagine that you're sitting in front of like your bank manager, your wife, your girlfriend, your mum, your dad, whoever. But imagine you're sitting in front of them and they're saying, why are you gonna put money down here? If that makes it easier for people to like kind of rationalize or see in their head. But yeah.
It's a big part of the mentality in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
The discipline you just explained.
Yeah, definitely. I think you need to be able to be aware of your own mental state, and you need to be able to be on top of your mental state. Now, being on top of your mental state, everybody's brain is completely different to everybody else's. So how one person stays like on top isn't the same as how somebody else stays on top. And how somebody else might do the things to, like, for example, like I just said, if I'm having a bad day in my personal life but I've got trades, I'm just not going to trade that day. I'm just not even going to put myself through the stress of it. But somebody else, they might be having a bit of a bad day, like in their personal life, or they've had a bad week or whatever, but they actually are able to just still sit down and trade. Maybe that's because, maybe they'll go for a walk or they'll do this. But for me, like, I'm not kind of a go for the walk to clear your mind kind of person. It's just if it's just a bad day, then that's it. I just accept that it's a write-off and that's it. But the good thing about that for me is where if it's a bad day and I just say, okay, I'm not going to trade, the good thing is it means that I wake up tomorrow and I haven't lost anything.
Very true.
And that's
You protected yourself ultimately.
Yeah. And so always being aware of your mental state is very important. And I'm sure it probably is somewhere in some like trading stuff. But in poker you have your like A game, your B game, and your C game, and anything under that is just terrible. And it's all to do with like your mental state. So your A game is obviously like you've slept really good, you're eating really good. You're like super fresh, your mind's clear, everything's good, you've got no worries, no nothing, you're literally completely dialed in and zoned in. And then your B game is like maybe you're a little bit tired, or maybe you're not really feeling that good, or maybe you had a bad night's sleep or this or that, but everything's kind of okay, but you're just not completely in the zone. And your C game is like you're running on empty and you're really not in the best mindset, but you're just about in a good enough mindset to still proceed. And so what a lot of pros do, and I don't know if this, I can imagine it could relate to trading, but I'm not going to encourage or advocate anybody doing it because it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. Is what some of the pros do in poker is they will intentionally, sometimes, this is only the maniacs, they will intentionally not sleep for about 24 hours and then go play for 12 hours. And that's because they want to intentionally put themselves in a negative state of mind to play in a negative state, or like not a negative state of mind, but a worse state of mind, so that the next time that they're, for whatever reason...
It's called insanity.
Yeah. So basically, the next time they're in that state of mind, their C game is better because they've got that much more experience doing it, if that makes sense. So like, even if they...
It's bizarre, but it does make sense.
Yeah, so it's like, even if they know they're not feeling great, they'll still rock up and play, but because they've done it so many times intentionally, they've got their own pitfalls that they avoid, and they know like the mind games that their own brains might play on them, which we call leveling. Leveling is, as well, it kind of goes back to what I said about, how I said about the coin flipping stuff.
Yeah.
So leveling is effectively where you're second guessing and self-doubting yourself into basically making the wrong decision, and it happens a lot.
Very relatable.
Yeah. So it's that thing of, do I, don't I, should I, shouldn't I? And in trading terms, it's basically, if I trade it, I bet it's gonna lose. Look, it lost. If I don't trade it, I bet it would have greened, but I'm still not gonna trade it. Look, I didn't trade it and it greened. That's right, I can't do anything right. Everything goes wrong, no matter what I do, no matter what I think, there's nothing goes right. And that's what we call leveling, because if you think of like a building getting leveled, that's effectively what you're doing to your brain. You're self-sabotaging your brain, and you don't even realize it, but it's a genuine natural human thing. Like, every human being does it. We all do it about certain things. Like, I'm sure everybody listening to this will have had some point in their life a decision that they're like, do I, don't I about, and that's literally it. You're kind of leveling, and it doesn't matter what the result is. It's just having that like, do I, don't I, that uncertainty, and just constantly it going around your head a lot is leveling. And you can kind of like control it and master it by simply realizing when that's happening. And like I said, with the 50-50 coin flip stuff, that's why I just decided to trust the data and the criteria, because then you're not going to be leveling yourself into a situation where you're always doubting yourself, because you're just saying, okay, I don't care what my brain's saying, I'm just going to do what the data says.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Given where you're at now,
yep,
if you were to look back prior to almost when you started, so when you were thinking about even exploring sports trading, what would you say to yourself knowing what you know now?
So I would say to myself that I definitely think that I did the right thing in sitting down and just watching every video on every strategy that I could, and then saying which one of these appeals to me the most. And then...
Sorry, I don't like to be the interrupting type.
Yeah.
But something I actually want to know, because I'm sure people who've got this far and listening want to know. So you went through all the videos. Was that with the intention of trying to find a single strategy?
Yes.
You wanted to hone in on?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was... Because like when it kind of links back to what I said a little bit earlier about how
you wanted a shorter time frame, so that's why you went with the over 3.5.
Yeah. So it was when I kind of back what I said about how I would see the liquidity, see all that, and I thought this can actually, like, there's clearly people beating the markets. There's clearly people actually making money doing this. And so that's then when I thought, okay. And then when I found all the YouTube stuff and TTM and things like that, that's when I said, okay, so I know there wouldn't be this much money in all these markets if people weren't beating them. If it was a mug's game, people wouldn't be doing it. And I know we can have that discussion about bookmakers, but from a trading perspective, if it was a mug's game, people just wouldn't be doing it. And so I knew then that, especially as you can see the over round as well, so you can see like backing is usually 101.9% and laying is normally 98.1%, I think. That's usually what it...
Yeah, it's not. I did notice that figure the other day. It's not something I typically look for, but I've started seeing that percentage on there. When I'm, certainly on desktop.
Yeah, it's usually weighted in favour of well, not in favour, but the vig is usually on the back. But that doesn't mean that because the lay side technically doesn't have an overround, it technically does, because even if you've got 2% commission, if the back is 101.9 and the lay is 98.1, your 2% commission, that's 100% 0.1. So if you just blindly lay everything, you have a negative 0.1% edge. So please don't just go and randomly just blindly lay stuff, because just a commission will just, yeah.
That's good thought, that.
Yeah.
So, before I rudely interrupted you, going back to what you would tell yourself now, knowing what you know and how far you've come, what you would tell yourself when you first started out.
Yep, so I would tell myself that, so do you mean when I just first started trading?
Yeah. So pretend you're a newbie, you've just sat down for the first time, opened up the exchange, rather than using it like a bookmaker, which I've done before.
Yeah.
What would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself that I'm doing the right things, in that having watched all the videos, and chosen a specific strategy, it's now also the right thing to just sit there and just kind of watch the markets. And I think I've said this in some places in the community, where there would be some times where I'd just be like literally spend almost the entire day just staring at the markets and watching stuff. And I appreciate not everybody has that time, because everybody other than me has a life, but I had the time to be able to do that. And so by taking a step back, because when I very, very first found the exchange, like nothing made sense, right? Because it kind of looks like a bookmaker, but it's not. It's a financial market. So you're kind of used to seeing, like, you know, the overs unders. Oh yeah, I know all that. But then it's, wait, hang on, what's all this other stuff mean? And so it's like, what are all these?
I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Smarkets does feel more like a financial exchange than Betfair.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Just the look about it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
No,
interrupt.
it's alright. Yeah, so looking at exchange, saying, okay, what does this all mean? Because obviously, you know, you've got the stuff like the overs, like with football, you've got the overs unders markets, you've got stuff like yellow cards, you've got all the same lines that a bookmaker has. But the reason why you have the same lines that a bookmaker has is because it's a betting exchange, so it's an exchange for that particular sporting event. In this example, I'm talking about football, so this football match. But what I would do is because I didn't even know what a lay was, right? I thought that, like, I know they kind of are similar, but I thought like backing was buying and laying was selling. But I think it's actually the opposite. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's not like backing. It's not like buying and selling. It's more like it's entering and exiting, which isn't the same as like buying X of one position. Because with stocks, if you're trading all that stuff, you're buying a specific amount of shares, whereas on like a betting exchange, you're just putting in X amount of money at X price. You're not actually doing anything with shares. This is completely off topic.
No, none of it is. Not everybody might want to hear it. People just, they want the juice, don't they?
Yeah.
Like, fuck all that.
Yeah.
How do I make money? There's so much more to it than that.
Exactly, and that's actually a very good point. It's I think a lot of people also have a notion of, okay, you've like you said, the betting exchange is a very niche thing, and so you might stumble across the exchange or something. You might see a few videos or this, that, or the other, and you might just think, there's a lot of money there. I can just make a whole load of money. But a lot of people don't understand that that's just not the case, and it does take a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of dedication. And it's not until like the kind of conversations that I've had with some people on the server and stuff that I've actually taken a step back and seen like how far I've come. Because to me, obviously, I've seen my growth and stuff like that like every day. So it's like, to me, it's like I'm just a little bit better than I was at day one. Whereas actually, like, stopping and thinking about it, it's like, okay, I'm an awful lot better than day one. But I think too many people like stumble across the exchange, and then they just kind of think, okay, let's then they might find like a strategy. They might come into TTM, but they still think, okay, I've got a strategy, I've got this, I've got that. So where's the money? and making money in this is a byproduct of the hard work that you do. It's not about that really fancy green. It's about all that work behind the scenes that's led to that. So it's all about just getting your head down with the criteria, data selection processes, strategies, maybe finding your own strategies or your own edges and stuff like that. That's all of the work, and putting all the time and effort in that, the byproduct is going to be profit. It's not, I'm just going to sit down, fire up the exchange and make money today. That's not how it works. I'm sure that might be how it works for some people, but it's certainly not how it works for me. Because I'm nowhere near there yet. Eventually, and I think only the people at the highest level can actually just fire up the exchange and go, there's some money there, and do it. But that's way down the line. And if you're here just for the money, you're probably here for the wrong reasons, or you need to
That's interesting.
Yeah, or you need to understand that the money is a byproduct of getting good at this. It's not about just putting down a trade and going, I'm going to make money. Getting good at trading, the byproduct of getting good at it is money. And how you do that is through 99% of the work being data, criteria, backtesting, going over your losses, maybe talking to people, doing everything that you can to actually make better decisions. Because again, if you're making better decisions, the byproduct of better decision making is more profit. So that's also linking back to the stress and pressure. That's also why I don't feel as much stress and pressure, because I know that if I'm trusting the data, trusting the criteria, and even if I have a loss, and even if I'm utterly convinced that loss is down to variance, I will still go through all the motions of going over the loss and seeing, like, okay, did I miss something, or was it just variance, or this, that, or the other? But that's also, again, why the kind of money aspect, or like, do I feel any stress or pressure to make a certain amount of money? It doesn't faze me, because that's just not how I look at it. I just look at it as money is the byproduct of being good at this. So all I need to focus on is being good at this. I don't need to focus on the money. I need to focus on getting good.
So it's not money that motivates you. Is it looking at it and going, yeah, I knew better than most of them? What motivates you?
So that's actually a really good question. What motivates me is quite simple, but also quite complicated. It's just the drive to succeed. It's just the drive to do better. And you're right. It's as I said. It's not about the money. The money is secondary to me. But it's great that you brought it up, because I think you should ignore the money until you're profitable at least. So focusing on things like profit and loss, strike rate, ROIs, it's all well and good doing that. But if you're not profitable, then why are you spending your time going over that stuff? Because the answers to your losses or why you're not profitable isn't going to be found there. I'm guilty of doing that myself, though, especially for the first few months, until the light bulb went off of why am I wasting my time going over my profit and loss, my strike rate, my ROI, when I'm not profitable, and I could be spending that time actually increasing those things and going over my losses and doing something proactive instead of looking at it and waiting for it to improve. But also, I don't accept failure, and I will not give up. And maybe I misspoke there, because it's not failure that I won't accept, it's excuses. So I will never ever make an excuse as to why I lost a trade. I will do everything I can to go over the data again and to find the answer as to why that trade lost. But it does also help that I absolutely love trading. I really truly do, every aspect of it. And I think a lot of people, and I think we might have already covered this, but I think a lot of people would take researching and profiling as a chore, when that's not the case at all, where researching and profiling is 99% of the work and the other 1% is just clicking the buttons. So if anybody finds that 99% of trading, which is all the research, the criteria, the selections, then I would recommend start enjoying it and learn to love it. And as James said in a video some time ago, get addicted to showing up every day. And I always have done since day one, and it's absolutely true. And getting addicted to trading has been an incredible journey already, and I'm genuinely excited for the future. And also, one of my favourite quotes, and the quotes that always keeps me motivated, is actually a quote from Michael Jordan, who says, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." And so the reason that other people haven't succeeded isn't because they've failed, it's because they just haven't overcome those setbacks. Yet, fairly often, when as human beings we're faced with a setback, almost everybody will give up on the first one, and then almost everybody who's still there on the second one will give up, and then almost everybody there on the third setback will then give up then. And that's what separates people who are successful from people who just aren't quite there yet. But I won't say that separates successful people and failures or anything like that, because that's just not an option, because I don't see such a thing as failure or losers. It's all just a state of mind that might just need a nudge in the right direction. And people who have made it will always tell you how much they failed in life, because it's simply true. And there might be somebody who wants to say something like, well, that's easy for a multimillionaire, if not billionaire, like Michael Jordan to say something like that. But I would say you cannot know the sweet taste of victory without first crawling in the agony of defeat, which is also another one of my favourite quotes. And also, 85% of all millionaires today are self-made, and most people aren't aware of this statistic, and they don't believe it when they hear it, because we constantly hear how the game is rigged, just give up, don't even try, everything, like, it's hopeless, don't even bother. But I don't think most people have ever stopped to ask who's actually telling them that, and it's always people who don't want the best for you or have your best interests that are telling you that. And nobody, in regards to that, nobody has failed more than Michael Jordan in basketball, but that just drove him to do better. He told himself that no excuse is valid, none reasons are valid, but be careful not to conflate excuses with reasons, because it's very easy to say, oh, I lost this trade because the markets, the team, the horses, they're just stupid, or whatever other excuse, and or even like flagellate yourself over it, so that spiral of self-doubt, and I knew I should have, I knew I shouldn't have done this, done that, etc, etc. But it's a lot harder to be able to take a step back and say, this is why I lost. So it's a lot harder to say, I lost because of X, Y, Z, or A, B, C, so I need to work on at least X to at least start somewhere to do better next time. And you might ask, well, what does basketball have to do with trading? Michael Jordan's job would have been a lot easier if it was the same shot in the same spot, night in, night out. But that's actually what makes our job as traders, or just trading in general, easier. We can just sit there practicing one shot in the same spot, night in, night out, until it's perfected, and even better, we can do it risk-free through paper trading. So take setbacks as a lesson and part of your learning curve, instead of saying to yourself, this doesn't work, this is hopeless. Well, have you gone over your losses? Have you identified why it lost? And you might be thinking, no, because how do I know how it lost if I don't know how it lost?
It absolutely blows my mind how deep a thinker you are, and your analytical skills. I was just listening then, I was thinking, Jesus Christ, there's so much more work to be done. Every time I host one of these and speak about a subject, I just think, Christ, I think you're making progress. There's so much more involved. So Dan, given how I've already described you as incredibly deep thinking, I suppose, and analytical, can you walk us through what your typical day looks like? Are your trades pre-planned the night before, and etc.? Please walk us through how it is you do your day.
Yep, so the first thing that I do, or should I say the last thing the day before, so for example, tomorrow with trading, my trading day tomorrow actually starts tonight, because tonight is the night before is when I will always profile everything, go through selections, go through the data and all of that. And the main...
You're building the picture?
Yeah. So I'll go through like with horse racing, I'll go through like horse race cards. I'll go through my own like strategies and things like that, and see what's available. I might have a once I've had a look at that, I might have a brief look at the market just to have a look. But there's gonna be like not much in there anyway. Have a look at the selections, whether it's for example, if it's a football game, looking at the spreadsheet that Aaron does, but also going through footy stats. And as a full disclosure, I do have the premium subscription to footy stats. But on that note, I only actually paid for it and bought it when I was making enough money from trading football to do it. So that was kind of like a little, I guess, reward kind of thing, where okay, you're doing good enough now, you can afford it. And the main reason that I did is you can absolutely get everything off of soccer stats. Personally, I just can't stand the UI and the I know it's free and it's amazing and it's absolutely fantastic. Anything that's on footy stats is on soccer stats. It's just, if I'm spending that much time, and we're talking hours and hours and hours a day, sometimes going through data and selections and thinking about what I want to trade tomorrow and what I'm going to do, because sometimes I will just do like the odd swing trade and stuff like that as well. So it's not particularly any strategy. It's just I see a price is pretty good for the risk, and we're not really expecting goals in the next 5 minutes. So I might just jump in just for a quick, basically not quite a scalp, so it's more of a swing trade, but just a very quick swing trade or something like that. But I will outside of like kind of that, it will just be profiling, selecting. And the reason that I do it the night before is so that then, once I get up in the morning, I've then, you know, I'm refreshed. I've slept, hopefully, but I'm refreshed and I've got a fresh set of eyes again, and I've had that rest. So I will then in the morning, I will go back over everything tomorrow morning for everything I've got that day before I even open up the exchange or anything, just to double check that I am absolutely happy and confident with what I've selected last night. Yeah, and so at the moment, like I said, I'm currently trading horses, and horse races are between like 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. So that kind of gives me a rough idea of when I'll probably be trading, or just the times that I'll be trading. So I know that, you know, if I have a bit of a late night or something, like if I go to bed at 2, 3, 4 in the morning or something like that, I'm still going to be alright. And so then I'll wake up at maybe 10, 11 in the morning, and just go back over everything. And if I agree with everything that I did the night before, like, yep, that selection, yep, I'm happy with that, then yeah, I just wait for the time to come around and then just trade it. And once I've done all my selections for the day or all my trades for the day, that's it. I pretty much just fire up some movies and yeah, do whatever. Maybe go cook some dinner or something. It's pretty boring. I don't really have much of a life outside of trading, but
by the time it comes round to your first trade, everything's in place. You know exactly what you're looking for and where you're going.
Yeah. Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that. I do. Yeah. And I look at it the night before, and then I'll look at it again in the morning. And when I'm looking at it again in the morning, if I'm still not, so I'll look at it at night, and then if in the morning I'm like, actually, well, the first thing I do when I wake up is go over everything I profiled the night before for that day. And if there's something that I don't agree with, I will still leave it there, but I'll like write physical notes about why I'm in two minds about it, or something about the data that doesn't quite look right, and then I'll go and maybe have some breakfast, maybe jump in the shower, just do whatever, and then I'll come back to it and I'll just double check. And if I'm like no, everything is fine, then yep, all good. And that little bit is slightly separate to the coin flip stuff we talked about, because it's not that I'm doubting myself, it's the fact that the night before, it's the end of the day, I'm probably quite tired, so there might have been something that I overlooked, or something that I didn't pick up because I was just tired or whatever. So then looking at it again with a fresh pair of eyes in the morning, if there is something that's like, actually I shouldn't have chosen that as a selection, then I've avoided it because I can just walk away, or just like just not include it in my selections for that day. But when it comes to my first trade, everything's lined up for the day, so I don't have to do any work during my, like I said, at the moment it's horses, so between 1 and 9 p.m, I'm not frantically trying to think like, oh, what about this race, what about this race, what about this horse, what about that. I've already done that. It's all done and it's all ready for me. And so the only thing I've got to do is just type the buttons.
Brilliant stuff. So this leads me on to, I suppose, my closing question. Before I ask that, is there anything else you would like to add to any of this discussion? Anything else you feel that you could add in terms of your wisdom?
In terms of my wisdom, well, thank you, I guess. There is actually something, yeah.
Well, there's a reason why you've got here in the first place.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm not good at taking compliments, so, but yeah, thank you. I think, do you remember how you said about that when you speak to people, like it always kind of surprises you with like just how like deep thinking and how much on a deep level like some people are with this stuff. I think it does kind of link back to a little bit that we touched on of how it's so much of this is just mental. And that's kind of, I think, what I want people to take away from this more than anything is the mental of this is pretty much everything. Like it's very, very difficult to actually have like a very concise thing about it, because everybody's mind is different. Everybody will approach things differently mentally. Everybody has a different mental state. We're all wired differently. We're all humans, but we're all wired a bit differently. So it's just about the balancing act of understanding how your mind works and your mind operates, how your mind perceives data, how your mind does this, your mind does that, and then saying, right, okay, these are the things that work and these aren't, right? So again, with me, I know that my mind, when I first came across trading, I know that my mind would not have accepted, like, I would, like, my mind, me, whatever, but my mind would not have accepted like a 45-minute or a 90-minute trade as like the first kind of trade. I don't know what not to trade a full football match for the whole 90 minutes, but I needed something that was, because I knew that like my brain would just not be interested after like 10-20 minutes. So whereas there might be somebody who really, really cannot stand something like very, very short like that. They might want to do like a whole second half thing or a whole first half thing, because they might just like that huge time window for the thing to happen or the thing not to happen. So it's just a whole balancing act of being able to understand your mind and how it works and how it operates, and being able to, it's such a balancing act that it's incredibly hard to really, really get super, super deep into, because everybody is just their own person with their own mind. But being able to actually know how your mind works is a skill that I think is very, very often overlooked. Like I know how I learn best. I know how I look at data, and I look at data the way I do, or I interpret it the way I do, because it works for me and it's what I'm comfortable doing. Whereas somebody else might look at the data differently. They might be just as profitable, more profitable, but they know how their brain works and how they're going to analyze it. So they're not going to make it difficult for themselves by doing something that they know that their brain is just going to get disinterested in, which then, if you're constantly doing things that you might not know how your brain best works, but you'll know, like, if you get bored after 5 minutes of doing something, it's not necessarily the thing that you're getting bored of, it could be the way you're doing it. So if you just try and approach it differently, it might go, oh, there we go. And it is just such a balancing act, but being able to actually understand how your brain just works and fires and how it interprets everything is, like, I think something that's super overlooked or not really spoken about much. But I think the reason is because it's such an individual thing that it's very, very difficult to say, oh, you're having this problem, this is exactly why. It's not that simple. It's simple to do that. Like, anybody could show me a game where they thought a second half goal would happen, but it didn't, and I could probably tell you why. But the way that you're going to look at that data might not be the same. You might look at the exact same criteria, data, statistics, but you might think a different conclusion. Not necessarily that the goal isn't going to come, but you might think, actually, there's going to be 2 goals here, or there's going to be 3 actually, or I'm not going to enter till the 60th minute because there's not going to be anything till the 60th minute, and I know that I don't want to take the price at half time. Well, if you know that if you're not interested in taking the price at half time because it's higher, then okay, just wait till the 60th minute. There's nothing wrong with that. You obviously you are going to miss the goals that come between the 45th and the 60th minute, but there's nothing wrong with doing that, because if that's what you know you're comfortable with, and if you know that you're going to be tilted, or you know that your mental's going to be a bit jarred from taking like the higher price at half time instead of the price at 60 minutes, then just stick to taking the price at 60 minutes. Don't force yourself to do something you know you're going to be uncomfortable doing. Make it as easy as you can for yourself by doing the things that you're comfortable doing.
It's all insightful stuff, and what's worth pointing out again is, if people aren't believing it by now, mentality is the most important thing when it comes to this game, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And to sum up concisely, so I say that we're all our own people with our own brains and our own minds, and we interpret the world. Everybody interprets the world differently, and all that kind of stuff. So how you do something or how you look at something is the same way someone else is going to, but that doesn't mean you're right and they're wrong. It doesn't mean they're right and you're wrong. It doesn't mean be close-minded, but it also means don't be so open-minded that you end up confusing yourself, or don't be so close-minded that you end up confusing yourself. Again, it's just a very, very complicated balance and act, and again, everyone's their own person, so it's just on the individual to be able to harness that and actually balance it. And it is difficult. It's not like you just master it and that's it, you've mastered it. It's mental. Like, nobody goes through, if you think of like a graph, right? Let's think of a graph. Let's think of like 1.01 to decimal 2, right? And let's say the average happiness is 1.5, right? But in this example, the graph, but for argument's sake, it only goes 1.01 to 2. That's it. So the average mood of a human is going to be 1.5, right? Because we can't go to 1.00, but for argument's sake, it's 1.5. Now, you're not going to have that exact mood throughout your day. It's just not going to happen, right? You might wake up and you might be feeling really good, but then, a couple of hours into your day, for whatever reason, you might feel bored. Well, you've gone from 1.5 to like a 1.3 in your mood, but then, I don't know, you eat a pizza, I don't know, and then you feel really good, right? So now you're up to 1.6, you ate a pizza, right? So in other words, every single day, your mental is not going to be the same, right? Every minute of every day, you're not in the same mindset, and but it's just being able to be aware of that and just being able to harness it and just understand that it's not that you master it and then that's it. Your mental is just forever plateauing and is ever fine, and you're constantly stoic. It just doesn't work like that. It's constant work and constant kind of checking yourself and making sure that you are firing on all cylinders for all the right reasons.
That's brilliant. Absolutely outstanding. Tons and tons of information in there on this particular piece. I'm sure anybody will be able to take anything away from it. What I will ask, though, as my parting question to you, Dan, finally, I know you've covered a lot of ground already, your advice for somebody starting out.
My advice for someone starting out, that's a very good question and a very good one to end it on. Take it nice and slow. Don't be in a rush. It's not about the money, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Focus way more on your decisions, the data, the criteria. Don't worry about the money, because if you get the criteria and the data right, the money will speak for itself. So be less focused about the money and be more focused on the decisions, because if you look at this as a game that can be beaten instead of money, then all your focus will be on is just basically beating the game, and just putting in the time and the work. And I'm literally an example of it. I don't know I don't know how much time I've put into all this, but it's been a lot, and I'm pretty sure it's over 10,000 hours at this point. Because it was when I said it was I would work and come home, work trade, blah, blah, blah. It was literally like that. That's all I was. So any free time I had outside of work, I would be trading. But when I say trading, I mean like criteria, data, all that kind of stuff. But But yeah,
Research, not just sat putting money into the exchange or taking it out. You were doing all the due diligence.
Yeah. So like again, like 99% of my time is spent researching and doing all that stuff. 1% is actually trading. But when I've said trading, that's kind of what I mean. I mean just the whole shebang of it. So 99% of that time, yeah. But yeah, take it nice and slow. Take it steady. And also don't compare yourself to anybody else. Don't compare your journey to anybody else's. It's your journey, not theirs. It's your journey, not theirs. So don't worry about anything like that. The money, I would suggest looking at the money as secondary. Look at beating the markets as the objective. Don't look at making money as the objective, and you might find that things get slightly easier when you do that. I did that from day one as well, because I kind of, again, back to the mental stuff. I know that that's what works for me. Looking at it as a game that can be beaten, as opposed to give me money. Where's the money? We are all here to make money because that is why we trade, but that shouldn't be your focus until you're consistently profitable, in my opinion. So until then, just get your head down, do the work, take it nice and slow. There's no rush, and if you take a loss, it's a loss. Go over it, look at it, but don't let it put you off, because there's absolutely no reason to be put off. And if I put it in the server in I think it was in the kind of like four thing little essay that I did in the server. The biggest loss that I've had was $7,000, and I didn't walk away. That's the biggest loss I've had, and it was at the time I think it was about 30 to 40% of my bankroll. So it wasn't massively detrimental to my bankroll, but it was still quite a chunk. And if that didn't scare me away, then not to sound rude or harsh, but like if you lose a couple quid or 5 or 10 quid, it shouldn't scare you off. And especially if you're worried, if you're more focused on the money, then that might be why you're getting scared, or you are feeling scared. But it's not like an arrogance thing from me, as to like, oh, I lost $7,000 and look at me, I'm still here. I did very, very stupid stuff. Basically, that's why I lost that money. But
I was going to ask, why did you allow yourself to have a 30 to 40% liability?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can just basically, I was laying over 3.5. A goal came. I waited 1 to 2 minutes for the odds to settle. I can't remember exactly what what the price I entered or my liability or anything like that. I know it would have been between 3 and 4, but I can't remember. So laying over 3.5, goal came in. I waited. I never wait more than 2 minutes for the odds to settle, because sometimes the odds are still bouncing around for 2 minutes. But at the 2 minute mark, I literally, if a goal goes in and I'm on 3.5, I get a stopwatch out on Google and just hit run, and I just stare at it, and as soon as it hits the 2 minute mark, I'm out. If the odds haven't settled by that time, 2 minutes, I'm out. About 40 seconds, second goal came. I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait 1 minute and then trade out, because the odds were really going crazy. Like, they were just jumping around like crazy then. And then another 40 seconds, a third goal came. And bearing in mind, this was in the space of 2-3 minutes. There'd been 3 out of 4 goals. So I and instead of just saying screw this and just walking away, because everything was happening so fast, I couldn't even think straight. So it wasn't like tilt, because I wasn't mad or angry. I was just like, right, I'm in a bad situation. How do I make the best of this? What can I actually do? And very, very, very quickly, I said, well, I can walk away. I can basically take what I'm going to lose and slam it all on another goal, or put as much money down on another goal to happen, because obviously I was laying the overs, so put as much money down on another goal to happen that would cover my loss. And so for whatever reason, I decided to do that. But again, it was all happening so quickly that I just couldn't think straight. So it wasn't like I was mad, angry, or tilted. I just couldn't think straight. And when 3 out of the 4 goals go in, the reason why it's a bit of a tough decision as to what to do in that spot is because you're going to be trading out for about 90% loss. So the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, in that sport is just trade out. If you are in that bad of a sport, the worst thing you can do is trade out, because, well, what's the point? Like, but the best thing you should do is just walk away and leave it. Just walk, just because, especially if 3 out of 4 goals have gone in within like 2 or 3 minutes, it's up to you whether you want to think it's likely another goal is going to come, and then you're just going to take the 100% red. But there's no point taking a 90% loss. So if you are ever in that situation where something like that happens so fast, just close down the exchange, because it's going to stop you doing anything stupid. And even as soon as I did it, I went, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? And then no goal came. There wasn't a 4th goal, and
But what you say there about walking away and closing the exchange is probably almost as important a message as any, certainly in that scenario.
Yeah. And the irony is, if I had just walked away, well, I would have just taken a full lay bet green. But yeah, it was just, everything was just happening so fast, and literally, again, what I was saying about your C game and leveling yourself, I just basically leveled myself into making the worst decision. Because I was thinking, what do I do? 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 And I just didn't have the answer, so I just just basically slammed a load of money on another goal, and it didn't happen. But that was just me being stupid. But again, it was just all happening so quickly that.
It's powerful and so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing all that information and all that knowledge. I hope everybody does genuinely take something from that. Let us know in the comments below if you want more conversations like these. I'm sure he might not agree right now, but I'm sure Dan will come back on another future episode. If you want to hear from the other pro traders on the trading and market community as well, again, please let us know in the comments, and we'll be speaking to you very soon. Cheers.
The sponsor for this podcast went bankrupt before we could publish it. I knew it would happen. Who the hell thinks they're going to make money insuring Black Hawks? Them bastards are always dropping out of the sky.
What an amazing interview, Matt. Honestly, I enjoyed it start to finish, and personally, I think I've learnt a lot from that as well. And I always struggle to explain my journey to people because it started a long time ago, and with this being so fresh in Dan's mind, it was nice to get that raw sense of emotion and feeling and how he dealt with different situations which for me have long been dulled. I hope you took a lot out of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need a new notepad. Like I said, it's to see how full-time traders actually operate to what we see these guys doing on YouTube and whatnot. There's so much detail involved, disciplines, as we keep talking about.
It's nice to see somebody who's turned themselves from an amateur to a pro rather than the dribble that we listen to from people who pretend to be pros.
No, I can vouch for that. It's somebody who's given you the raw detail of what it actually takes, not just give me your money and I'll turn you pro, because that doesn't work.
Yeah, 100%. And I take as much out of this podcast as I suppose the people do at home. I know we spend a lot of time talking on it and we spend a lot of time planning it. I know over the last 2 weeks you've been recording this with Dan, but have you been doing any trading, or what have you been up to over the last couple of weeks?
No, like I said, really, I haven't actually done any trades. I've done the odd 4-fold accumulator over the weekend, which went painfully close, but Napoli let it down. In terms of trading, I have been looking at backing horses, so I've just been doing quite a bit of testing there and looking around Europe really to see what the crack is with the games in the lead up to game week 8, where it's time to trade.
Have you had any success on your horses?
Yeah, we're currently, as we speak, 30 points up for the month, which isn't too bad for backing. There has been ups and downs. We've just come off the back of a down, but with 8 tradable days left of the month, because I won't be counting Fridays and Saturdays, it'd be good to see where we are, and I'll do another month and then might consider putting minimum stakes on.
It's phenomenal to be 30 points up at this point. I know you are on the back of a sort of downwards turn, but that's just variance, and
Yeah.
That happens in every strategy. If you to ask me, which you haven't done, but I'm going to presume you were going to, the only thing I've really traded this week would be the F1, which I traded the Singapore Grand Prix. Absolute phenomenal race for anybody who didn't see it, which would be perfect for our later track in F1, which will be in episode 4. This week, I watched Russell in third place drop down to 1.03 and then put it into the wall, which resulted in some decent profit for myself, to be fair, as I saw the strategy Sainz was playing before he played it.
Yeah, it was a good race to watch. Still not one of the best. I felt it started slowly because I watch Formula 1 as a fan, and I will be probably making the effort to set an alarm to get up for it on the weekend. It will probably revert back to type. That wouldn't surprise me at all, but hopefully. I just yearn for it to be how it was 2 years ago, where there were numerous people fighting for victories and teams.
Well, I think this Japanese Grand Prix that we've got coming up, which would have been this morning on the day of the release of the podcast, I think we're going to see much the same from Verstappen, is my guess, because it's a high-walled street circuit, which Red Bull aren't great at. And the reason for that is they're great at going round long banking corners, but when it's a 90-degree bend, not so much. It's not designed for them. I know they had real problems with the tyres because they were just in the ride height, which made them unable to judge. They were just in the ride height, which affected the grip they had, so they were incredibly slow. I think we'll see the same again this weekend with that as well.
Well, it's great for everybody to see, isn't it? Sainz did play a blinder. You're absolutely right. He's not the fastest of drivers, and I suppose if you watch it, any pundit would probably tell you that as well. But he's kind of no frills, and he just knows exactly what to do at the right times. He positions his car perfectly, doesn't he?
Yeah, I've got to say, the teamwork between Sainz and Lando was absolutely phenomenal, bearing in mind that they're not on the same team. And it was a beautiful moment when when the Ferrari strategist or his race engineer came over the radio and said Lando is 0.8 behind with DRS, and Sainz says, yeah, it's on purpose. That shows the intelligence of drivers, I think.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. It was very classy. It was being spoken about as if Mercedes were actually going to win the race, and I couldn't see it. There wasn't enough laps for me.
I could see why, but I don't think there was enough overtaking points. So the price got down to 1.03 for Russell.
Wow.
And that was a great opportunity to just start taking money off the market. It was literally like printing money at that point. It would have all gone terribly wrong, I'm sure, if Russell had won, but he had to get past Lando and Sainz, and I couldn't see him doing both. I know that Lando was running a defensive game, because you've got to think the partnership that them two have dates back to the time at McLaren, so they're not about to let somebody get past just to attack one of their friends.
Yeah, and not just that, I think where Lewis was all over the back of Russell as well, it just wasn't going to happen. I think he was trying to fight two battles at once, essentially.
Yeah, of course, and Lewis Hamilton was pushing Russell to put on pace because Lewis had pace behind him, and that ultimately resulted into Russell crashing into the wall. I do like the replay I've seen of it, of Russell trying to find a gap in order to overtake, and if you actually watch the replay of Russell's crash, he hits a sponsorship board, and his car hits exactly the 3 letters within a word that says gap as well.
Okay,
That did make me laugh.
That's not where I thought you were going with it. I seen a video of just before it. It's Russell's on board, and the ghost of Senna appears and says, "You're no longer a racing driver if you don't go through a gap."
Oh, and then hits the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, with the gap. Yeah. Yeah. Same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's no. It was a good race, and I'm predicting an even better one this weekend as well. And I can't wait to see how they perform at Vegas, as with it being the first time the race has been there. But it should be good. We'll cover that more in episode 4 when we talk about later track.
Yeah.
we've also got in learning to pick a racehorse winner. So a video I know you've watched, and we're going to cover your journey on that, I suppose, and the negativity behind the video.
Yeah, no, that's what inspired me to actually start paper trading back in horses. So I'm looking forward to that.
What, that video?
Yeah, I watched it and there was so much negativity in the comments because they just couldn't believe that all you were telling us to do is what you were telling us to do, which we'll cover next week. Sorry, in a couple of weeks. But yeah, it can work. You just have to create a set of rules, which I wasn't doing at first. I was just going along, seeing if I could read a race card. And for me, that was an important exercise in itself. But I digress. Got to save some content for 2 weeks' time.
Being on YouTube is not for the faint-hearted, and there was so much negativity on that video. I remember we were talking to Nikki, who read the comments, and she went, "I feel offended for you." But what I'll do for that episode as well, Matt, is I'll dig out some of the worst comments and we'll have a read of them and then discuss.
Yep, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, and also I think we're going to cover in why wait 8 games.
That is important because this will fall just at the right time for that. So there'll be lots of current information in that one, which I'm sure will be valuable to anybody that's looking to trade football.
Yeah, and I can't wait myself, as my mighty Preston North End have now played 7 games. I've only got 1 more to wait, and we are currently top of the league, undefeated.
Flying.
I won't go that far. It's basically a misprint, I think. I don't think we'll be there very long.
To be top of that league, though, that's quite impressive because it's a fascinating league, the Championship.
Of course, when you look at who's behind us, we have Leicester, Norwich, Birmingham, Ipswich, some big player teams in there.
A lot of the usual suspects as well that are always up there in the top 6.
Yeah, I think it's a tough league when you've got a team in there towards the top at least as well, with Leicester that have won the Premier League inside the last 10 years. It was inside the last 10 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think the last 4, it was more recent than the FA Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah, when you've got teams that are performing at that level, or can perform at that level, or have performed at that level in an ultra competitive league, it makes for interesting football. I'm just very glad to be sat here in this week's episode, and that might all change because I will be honest, this is recorded on the Thursday, and we all play again on the 23rd, so it could have all changed by then. But at time of recording, top of the league. And how are your mighty Arsenal doing, Matt?
We are, God, I haven't got the league in front of me, but we've only dropped a couple of points and there's a massive game on Sunday against Tottenham. I will, and I might regret saying this on record, but I quite like Postecoglou. It's a shame that he's at Tottenham. But
Who's he?
He is the Tottenham manager, Big Ange, big Australian bloke. He was manager of Celtic prior to this, and prior to that he was...
is that the guy that Robbie Williams has done the Angels song about?
That's the one. But enough of Tottenham. I'm an Arsenal fan. We're back in the Champions League now. Great opening game against PSV. So let's see where it takes us this year. I won't talk about the goalkeeper situation because that's annoyed me.
Well, I'm definitely going to ask about it because I have no idea what you're on about. I don't even know what the score was.
We've bought... Well, we haven't bought really, but we've got the Brentford keeper, David Raya, on loan. And he has taken over from our goalkeeper, Aaron Ramsdale. I can understand why. Managers now want you to play out the ball from the back rather than worry about actually stopping shots, don't they?
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's his reasons why.
Oh, fair play. Well, so you're playing Tottenham this weekend, and the mighty Preston North End are playing Rotherham, who are all the way down in 21st place.
I feel like they've been bottom of the league, Rotherham, for about 3 seasons, but they're just there. It used to be the same with Barnsley. Barnsley were quite often festering around the bottom of the Championship, as Wigan used to in the Premier League, and they'd always stay up at the end.
Yeah, the good old days of Paul Jules. Yeah,
when Heskey used to play centre-back for the last few games of the season, he was one of the best defenders in the league.
Very, very true. Very true. Well, I think we need to wrap that up there, Matt, unless you've got anything else.
No, I don't want to take away too much content for the next couple of weeks. By all means, feel free to get up and watch the race so you can talk about it.
Of course. I'm going to say, unless there's anything else, Matt, until the next podcast, which is episode 4, the only thing that's left to say is happy trading.
Happy trading indeed. I bid you farewell.
This podcast is sponsored by Affogato, with vanilla ice cream and hot espresso.